Hi, welcome to Give Me the Bible, where God's Word speaks for itself. In the previous video, we talked about the fact that the media matters. It has an effect on our minds and our hearts, and so we need to be careful about what we're watching and what we're listening to on TV or in movies or in the music that we listen to. And in the following videos, we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about the way media affects us. But in this video, I want us to just put forth this very basic principle that everybody really understands, but we don't think about it very often in practical terms when it comes to media, and that is the principle that observation affects our behavior. Think about this question: how did we learn to talk? Well, we learned to talk by observing our parents talk, listening to our parents talk. And then what happened? We gradually started to mimic them, and our words really weren't perfectly right, and the parents would joke when the baby says something. They'd say, see that, he said dad, or no, he said mom. They couldn't really make it out, but they were trying, right? They're trying to get the baby, can you say dad? Could you say mama, right? And they're trying to get him to do it, and the baby's doing his best to try to mimic that and imitate that, but it's just not coming out right. And even when they get a little bit older, it's still a bit of a struggle. I remember my brother, hopefully he isn't embarrassed by this video, but he used to say the word lobster, but he would say hopster, okay? Well, we got a kick out of that. We thought that was really cute. He'd call it hopster instead of lobster, but that's what he was doing. He was trying to emulate the behavior that he was observing from his parents, and he was listening to from his parents, and eventually he got it, and speaks just fine now. Okay, that's how we learn. But imagine if a child was just locked in a silent room his or her entire life. Would they ever learn to talk? Well, they might know how to make noises, just because instinctively we do have that ability as humans to just make grunts and sounds with our vocal cords, but they wouldn't really learn how to talk because they wouldn't have anybody to observe and to listen to take that behavior in themselves and be able to basically emulate in their own life. Well, let's apply that to media. If you never ever have observed a person cussing out somebody that they're angry at, are you likely then to go and cuss out a person that you're angry at? No, because you've not ever really observed that. That's not something that you've filled your mind with, that you've seen, and so why in the world would you ever emulate that? There are things that influence us in the media that if we had never seen it, we really wouldn't have that influence. Sure, you can argue, yes, man is sinful, and so it's not like if we had never seen anybody lie on TV that we would never lie. But surely you can see that there's a principle there, that the more we observe the unhealthy behavior on the screen, or we take that in through our ears, through the music that we listen to, the more likely it is that we are going to behave in those unhealthy ways as well. That's why it's so important for parents to raise their children in a way that their children can see and observe their parents having godly behavior. Because what so often happens is whenever the parents are ungodly, and let's say they're just alcoholics or something like that, usually that affects that child, and that child grows up and he has similar problems and repeats that cycle, because guess what? That's what he's seen. That's what he's observed. Well, when we see and we observe things in the media, that affects us. Notice what Paul says in Romans chapter 12 and verse 2. He says, do not be conformed. Romans 12 and verse 2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. Paul says, don't be conformed. Don't be like the world. Well, guess what? If we're always watching what the world is doing, we're just taking that in for entertainment purposes, and we're always listening to the way of the world, the anger, the harshness, the curse words, the revenge, or whatever it is we're taking into our minds through music, we're likely to be conformed to the world, because we're taking the world into us. in an enjoyable way. We're enjoying the world, and eventually that's going to affect us. God says in James chapter 4 and verse 4 that he who makes himself a friend of the world is an enemy of God. So we need to be very careful, because the media affects our behavior by giving us sinful behavior to observe, to be entertained by, and to emulate in our lives. So let's be very careful with our media choices. I hope that's clear and helpful, and Lord willing, I'll see you next time.